Bullies tried to intimidate new teacher, she turned them into heroes instead. A story by Heartfelt Tales. The silence in the hallway was deafening as Maya Chen stood frozen, her small frame pressed against the cold metal lockers while three towering teenagers surrounded her like predators circling wounded prey. The fluorescent lights above flickered ominously, casting shadows that seemed to dance with the malice in their eyes. What they didn't know was that behind Maya's wire-rimmed glasses and quiet demeanor lay years of disciplined training that would turn their world upside down in the next 30 seconds. Maya had arrived at Roosevelt High School 3 weeks earlier, carrying nothing but a worn leather satchel, a heart full of hope, and secrets she'd never planned to reveal. At 26, she looked younger than some of her senior students, her petite 5'2" frame often lost in oversized cardigans that belonged to her late grandmother. The other teachers had warned her about the notorious trio, Jake Morrison, Tyler Brooks, and Sean Martinez, boys who had made substitute teachers quit mid-lesson and driven 2 permanent faculty members to early retirement. The morning had started like any other. Maya was staying late to prepare tomorrow's lesson plans when she heard the heavy footsteps echoing through the supposedly empty corridor. She'd tried to slip quietly to her car, but they'd been waiting, lurking near the exit like they owned the place. Well, what do we have here? Jake's voice dripped with mock concern as he stepped closer, his Letterman jacket stretched tight across his broad shoulders. Little Miss Chen working late again. Don't you have somewhere else to be? Maya's heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept her voice steady. I was just leaving, boys. You should head home too. It's getting late. Tyler laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. Oh, we're not going anywhere. See, we've been talking, and we think you need to understand how things work around here. His fingers drummed against the lockers, each tap like a countdown to something terrible. Sean moved to block her path to the exit, his smirk revealing teeth stained from too much energy drink and poor decisions. Yeah, teach. Time for a real education. Maya had faced this before, not here, not as a teacher, but in the dark alleyways of her childhood neighborhood where survival meant learning to fight or learning to run. She'd chosen to learn both, spending years in her uncle's dojo after her parents died, channeling her grief into something powerful and purposeful. But she'd left that life behind when she decided to become an educator, believing she could change lives with patience and understanding rather than force. I understand you're upset about the detention I gave you yesterday, Maya said, her voice remaining calm despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. But threatening a teacher isn't going to solve anything. Let's talk about this tomorrow during. Shut up. Jake's hand shot out, grabbing her wrist with brutal force. You think you can just waltz in here and start changing things? Making us look bad in front of everyone? The moment his fingers closed around her wrist, something shifted in Maya's eyes. The scared teacher facade cracked, revealing something harder underneath. She could feel the familiar weight of years of training settling into her muscles, her body remembering movements practiced 10,000 times in gyms that smelled of sweat and determination. Let go of me, she said quietly, but there was steel in her voice now. Tyler moved closer, emboldened by his friend's aggression. Or what? You'll give us another detention? He reached for her other arm. What happened next unfolded in a blur of motion that seemed to defy physics. As Tyler's hand approached her left wrist, Maya's right hand, the one Jake thought he had trapped, twisted in a move so fluid it looked like water flowing uphill. Jake's confident grip became his downfall as Maya used his own force against him, rotating her wrist in a joint lock that sent him crashing to his knees with a yelp of surprise and pain. Before Tyler could process what was happening, Maya had stepped into his space, her small hand finding the pressure point just below his elbow. The gentle-looking teacher who couldn't reach the top shelf in the supply closet suddenly moved like a dancer performing a deadly ballet, each movement precise and purposeful. What the hell, Sean started to say, but Maya was already turning toward him, her stance shifting into something that would have been familiar to anyone who'd spent time in a martial arts dojo. Her feet found their position automatically, her center of gravity lowering as muscle memory took over. The three boys who had terrorized teachers and students alike found themselves on the ground in less than 15 seconds, none of them seriously injured but all of them thoroughly humbled. Maya stood over them, not even breathing hard, her cardigan slightly askew but otherwise looking exactly like the mild-mannered literature teacher they thought they knew. "Now," she said, adjusting her glasses with hands that were perfectly steady, "let's talk about respect." Jake rubbed his wrist, staring up at her in bewilderment. How did you? 12 years of martial arts training," Maya said simply. "Started when I was 14, after my parents were killed in a home invasion. My uncle thought I should know how to protect myself." She smoothed down her cardigan, transforming back into the unassuming teacher they thought they could intimidate. "I didn't become a teacher to hurt anyone. I became a teacher because I believe every person has the potential to be better than their worst moment." Tyler struggled to his feet, his face flushed with embarrassment and something that might have been shame. "Why didn't you tell anyone? About the martial arts, I mean." Maya's expression softened, and for a moment, she looked every bit as young and vulnerable as they'd initially thought. "Because I wanted to be seen as a teacher first, not as someone to be afraid of. I've spent too many years being defined by violence and loss. When I stepped into that classroom, I wanted to be defined by hope instead." Sean was the last to stand, his earlier bravado completely deflated. We were just messing around. We didn't mean." "Yes, you did," Maya interrupted gently but firmly. "And that's okay. We all make choices we're not proud of. The question is what you choose to do next." The hallway fell silent again, but this time it wasn't filled with menace. It was the quiet of three young men confronting their own behavior, perhaps for the first time in years. Jake looked at his hands, remembering the moment his confident grip had been turned against him. Tyler touched his elbow where Maya had found that pressure point with surgical precision. Sean just stared at the small woman who had completely upended everything they thought they knew about power and strength. "Why did you give us detention?" Jake asked finally, his voice smaller than before. "Really, I mean. Not the official reason." Maya considered the question carefully. "Because I saw three intelligent young men wasting their potential on cheap laughs and easier targets. Because I've watched you in class when you think no one is looking, and I've seen glimpses of who you could be if you stop trying so hard to be who you think you should be." She moved to the window, looking out at the parking lot where her small Honda sat alone under a flickering streetlight. "I gave my uncle a lot of trouble when I first started training. I was angry about my parents, angry about being alone, angry about being small in a world that seemed designed to crush small things. He could have given up on me. Instead, he kept showing up, kept believing I was worth the effort, even when I didn't believe it myself." "What changed?" Tyler asked, and Maya was surprised to hear genuine curiosity in his voice. "One day, I realized that my anger was just fear in disguise. Fear that I wasn't strong enough, smart enough, good enough to honor my parents' memory. The martial arts didn't just teach me how to defend myself, they taught me how to be still with my own thoughts, how to find strength without needing to prove it to everyone around me." She turned back to face them, and they could see tears gathering behind her glasses. "You three aren't angry at me or at detention or at school rules. You're scared. Scared of not measuring up, scared of being vulnerable, scared of admitting that maybe the way you've been handling things isn't working." The truth hung heavy in the air between them. Jake's parents were getting divorced, and he'd been acting out ever since the papers were filed. Tyler's grades were slipping because he spent more time maintaining his tough guy image than studying, and college scouts were starting to look elsewhere. Sean's younger sister had been getting bullied, and he felt powerless to protect her without becoming the very thing that hurt her. "So what now?" Sean asked. "You could have us expelled." "Probably should, after what we tried to do." Maya shook her head. "Expulsion doesn't teach anything except that there are no second chances. Besides, I don't think you really wanted to hurt me. I think you wanted to feel like you had control over something in your lives. She walked over to her classroom door, fishing out her keys. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to help me move these desks back where they belong. Yes, I know it was you three who rearranged my classroom last week. Then you're going to sit down, and we're going to have the conversation we should have had weeks ago. For the next 2 hours, they talked. Really talked, perhaps for the first time in years. Maya shared stories about her uncle's dojo, about the discipline required not just to throw a punch but to know when not to throw one. She told them about the scholarship that had gotten her through college, about the nights she'd spent tutoring other students because teaching had become her way of honoring everything her parents had wanted for her. The boys, in turn, began to open up about their own struggles. Jake admitted that his aggression had gotten worse since his parents started fighting every night. Tyler confessed that he was terrified of graduating because he had no idea what came next. Sean revealed that watching his sister get picked on made him feel like the worst kind of failure. Strength isn't about making other people smaller, Maya said as they finally prepared to leave. Real strength is about making the people around you feel bigger, braver, more capable than they thought possible. She handed each of them a slip of paper. These are the addresses of 3 different community programs. Jake, there's a peer counseling group for kids dealing with family divorce. Tyler, there's a tutoring program where you can help younger students with math. I've seen your test scores when you actually try. Sean, there's a Big Brother program at the elementary school where your sister goes. You want us to help other people? Tyler asked, looking confused. I want you to discover that helping other people is the fastest way to help yourselves, Maya replied. Service isn't punishment, it's practice. Practice at being the men you're capable of becoming instead of the boys you're afraid you'll always be. The weeks that followed weren't easy. There were setbacks and moments of doubt. Jake had to resist the urge to fall back into old patterns when his parents' arguments got particularly brutal. Tyler struggled with the vulnerability required to admit he needed help with study skills. Sean found it harder than he'd expected to be patient with elementary school kids who reminded him of his own confusion and fear. But Maya was there for all of it, not as the martial arts expert who could take them down in seconds, but as the teacher who saw their potential even when they couldn't see it themselves. She stayed after school to help Tyler with college applications. She recommended books to Jake that dealt with complex family dynamics. She celebrated with Sean when his little sister came home excited about her new friend at school. 3 months later, Roosevelt High School looked like a different place. The hallways that had once echoed with the sounds of intimidation now buzzed with something else entirely. Jake had started a support group for other students dealing with family troubles. Tyler was not only passing all his classes but had been accepted to 3 colleges. Sean's work with the elementary program had inspired him to consider education as a career. Other students began to notice the change. The trio that had once been feared became respected, sought out by classmates who were dealing with their own struggles. Teachers who had once dreaded seeing their names on class rosters began to appreciate their contributions to classroom discussions. Maya watched it all unfold with quiet satisfaction, still the same unassuming teacher in oversized cardigans who had to stand on a step stool to write on the top half of the whiteboard. But now her students knew that appearances could be deceiving, that strength came in many forms, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you could do was choose not to use your power at all. On the last day of school, the 3 boys approached her desk after the final bell had rung. Ms. Chen, Jake said, his voice carrying a confidence that was earned rather than projected, we wanted to thank you. For not giving up on us, Tyler added. For showing us what real strength looks like, Sean concluded. Maya looked up from the papers she was grading, smiling at the 3 young men who had become living proof that people could change, that second chances were worth giving, and that sometimes the best way to handle bullies was to help them discover they were capable of being heroes instead. You don't need to thank me, she said. You did the hard work. I just believed in you until you were ready to believe in yourselves. As they walked out of her classroom for the last time as her students, Maya reflected on the journey that had brought them all to this moment. She thought about her parents, who had instilled in her the belief that education was the most powerful weapon against ignorance and hate. She thought about her uncle, who had taught her that true strength was always in service of protection, never domination. And she thought about the 3 boys who had tried to intimidate her in a dark hallway and instead found themselves on a path toward becoming the men they were always meant to be. The small teacher with the secret past had proven that sometimes the most profound victories happen not in a moment of physical triumph, but in the slow, patient work of helping others discover their own capacity for growth and change. In the end, that was a strength more powerful than any martial arts technique, the strength to transform fear into courage, pain into purpose, and bullies into protectors. Thank you for watching this story from Heartfelt Tales. Did this story touch your heart and remind you that everyone deserves a second chance? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever encountered someone who saw potential in you when you couldn't see it in yourself? Or maybe you've been the person who helped someone else transform their life, ***. If this story moved you, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who might need to hear this message today. Don't forget to subscribe to Heartfelt Tales for more inspiring stories that remind us of the good in humanity. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story that could change your perspective, ***. What story would you like to see next? Let me know in the comments, and remember, every person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Choose kindness. Choose to see potential. Choose to be the teacher, mentor, or friend who helps others discover their own strength, ***. Until next time, keep believing in the power of second chances. This is Heartfelt Tales, signing off, ***.